Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 26. Another 7 curious, interesting things I saw last week. So let's crack on. The first one is Amazon's REMARS event. So this is their machine learning, AI, robotics type event during the week. There was lots and lots of features. You can go and watch videos on the internet about that, but I just thought I'd pick out this one. And this was their sort of voice synthesis, and it was kind of a weird setup really. They were saying that during COVID we might have lost loved ones, so therefore wouldn't it be amazing if we can create lasting personal relationships through technology and Alexa. In this case, it is your grandparents' voice reading a bedtime story. The implication was that you've lost your grandparents during COVID and Alexa can step in. So this apparently takes less than 60 seconds worth of training data as well, which is really interesting. Usually it takes an hour or at least several hundred lines or 1,000 lines of script to actually get a voice to be mimicked. But this is apparently what this does. And there you go. So slightly weird setup, but lots of very interesting features coming from Amazon at the moment. They're still trying to flog their robot, all that sort of stuff. So definitely check it out. This is another piece of research. It's actually from the University of Copenhagen, and it piqued my interest because this is something I've always thought that should exist, which is thought-based image editing. So I am a designer, and I've spent a fair few times thinking, hang on a minute, surely the computer knows what I'm doing. I've already done 10, nose removals from something or other. Shouldn't it just take over the rest of them for me? Knows what I'm doing, and this is sort of going down that route. So this is some sort of research that uses a cranial cap to listen to brainwaves, and the brainwaves can listen out for some semantically separate thoughts like hair or nose or ears or mouth or whatever it might need to be. So if you're concentrating on the hair, then obviously the automated image editing platform can then change the hair color for you. So it's kind of interesting that we're now using lots of little bits and bobs of tech together to make something quite useful. So automatic image editing, which we now know exists, plus listening to brainwaves, etc. So there you go. That's kind of interesting. This may be the future of image editing, or any application, to be fair. So there you go. This is something again that has existed for a fair few years. I think I reported on this probably 8 years ago, something like that. But then it used quite a lot of technology, high-speed cameras and all sorts of gubbins. But this is actually using essentially normal cameras to do the same thing. So what is it doing? It is recovering sound using sight alone. So using cameras, video cameras, to look at objects and recover their vibrations from the video footage. And therefore, once you can recover the vibrations, you can turn that back into audio. So the way this works is you shine a laser beam on an object. That laser beam creates a speckly pattern. You then you point two relatively normal cameras, one that has a rolling shutter, which means it scans from top to bottom, and another one that has a global shutter, which means it just takes photos of the whole thing one at a time. If you compare the two, the one that is scanning from top to bottom will actually have all the vibrations in it, and the one that is actually just taking the whole thing will be a reference frame. Obviously they're jiggling around a little bit because it's probably on something carried by a human, for instance, but there you go. So what it does is it reconstructs the sound from the jiggling audio, sort of the jiggling sort of vibrations really. So in practical use, this means you can now quote unquote mic up something like an orchestra, pointing laser beams at every single instrument and recover their audio separately and then remix them live, rather than just taking that one sound of the audio from the orchestra. So there you go. So it's kind of interesting. If you're in the audio world, this may be a thing for you. There you go. Now this is a little bit of a change in pace really. This is super serious, obviously. Now, if you've not been following this, then Roe versus Wade was overturned, which previously gave women in America a right to abortion, essentially to have agency over their own bodies and do what they wanted, which is clearly a good thing, and that's been overturned. So now in many states in America, abortion is either imminently or is going to be outlawed and will become a criminal offence, which is clearly nuts. I try to keep politics out of the dinosaurs, but this is just bonkers. So this clearly affects half the population of America. Now, what this has then led to in a sort of a tech world is that anything that could actually be called evidence against your period or your menstrual cycle now is being called into sort of suspicion. So things that previously were great, like the Flow app, for instance, for your period tracking, are now essentially repositories of data that could be subpoenaed by the state, and they could make you guilty and therefore could be put you in trouble. So there are lots of other places where data may reside that is essentially tracking you. So this might be just even purely Facebook, which can imply your monthly cycles, or even your shopping basket, for instance, where you have certain objects in there, certain products in there. Now this has also then led to more and more sort of clamping down, or at least calls for security of data and what is shared and what is private. There's currently 2 bills going through, I think, the US courts at the moment. But then you've got things also like, say, T-Mobile have just launched their app sort of insights platform for advertisers. So, you know, well, that might be reporting on apps and their use. Even having one of these apps on your phone might be something that might sort of flag you. So that's just causing chaos, and this is clearly something that is bonkers. I say I don't really do politics in these things, but I don't agree with that. But if this is new to you, then this is what's going on. There you go. In a completely different change of pace, almost quite literally, I had the pleasure of going to Goodwood Festival of Speed. If you've not been, you definitely need to go. Lots of innovation there, lots of interesting cars. This is one of them. This is the McMurtry. This is the Spearling, I guess it's called. Now this is a tiny car, so it doesn't really show it on here, but that's a tiny car. There's one person sat in the middle of that. Now this car broke the record going up the hill, and as you can see, it is supremely fast. If you compare this to an F1 car, then it is either on par, or it actually beat it, because it beat the record. So why this is interesting is it weighs less than a ton, but it generates, even at standstill, 2 tons of downforce. So there's a fan inside this car that is pushing or sucking up onto the floor. So you see all that sort of guff and stuff coming out the back of it. That is because this fan is basically ejecting all of the air that it's sucking down. So it was amazing. Literally every day this went up the hill, I think twice. It left everybody in awe. So fans in cars is not a brand new thing, but just the performance of this was just insane. So there you go. The McMurtry fan car, as it was called. Well, it wasn't called that. Everybody referred to it as that. Now, we just heard about the Roe versus Wade and data. Now, this is the Italian Data Authority have now said, this is with an EU investigation as well, that anything that actually sends any data to the US is now basically in breach of GDPR. So before there was a sort of we could probably put it in a safe haven, all this sort of stuff, and it was okay to a certain extent, but now they've said absolutely not. We cannot trust the data going over to the US. Now, as we've heard through that previous thing with period tracking, etc., then there's a clear reason for that now. So any data that goes over to the US now has to be subject to GDPR. Any website that now doesn't adhere to this is now basically flirting with fines. So what does this really mean is things like Google Analytics, or even those reCAPTCHA codes, send over an IP address to Google. Now those IP addresses may not actually be available to the public or the site owner, but Google now have them, and therefore that is held in the United States. So they can't actually guarantee the safety of the data anymore that goes to America. So Italy are now clamping down on that, and Europe is pretty close behind anyway. It's already sort of implied, but this ruling has really sort of shown where they're going with that. So there you go. And finally, it's been a bit of a weird one this week, the eSkootr World Championship. Now I say world, it actually goes to 6 countries, i.e. a bunch of stuff in Europe and 1 in America. However, this is the eSkootr World Championship. You can see these little scooters. This is the S1X. Does 100 kilometers an hour apparently. Look at all the drama here. This is amazing. So this is on street circuit, so very similar to something like Formula E. Now they're very clear. There's lots of, the way this works is heats, so it's a fairly standard knockout round. Each team, I think, has 3 people in it, I think, and obviously the fastest rider in each team is the one that makes the final if they get through the knockout rounds. It's a very diverse crew. They're wearing motorbike leathers and helmets and all that sort of kit. So there you go. Go and check out the website. This is yeah, I'm not quite sure what to think about this. This is not exactly F1, is it? However, they do stress that each one of the competitors, they go pains to to stress that it's relatable and authentic role models for a new generation. So there you go. A new sport has been born, the eSkootr Championship. There we go. Bit of a weird one this week. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and I will see you next week. If you liked it, give it a like. If you're not subscribed, give it a subscribe, and see you later.